I used to think life was simple. Wake up beside the person you love, follow his footsteps wherever they lead. Rest your head in the place that feels like home. I never imagined a day when those footsteps would disappear behind tall wooden doors, leaving only silence, cold stone, and my own heartbeat to keep me company. My name is Amos, and this is the story of the days I waited, the days I healed, and the moment my heart found a second chance. It's the story of how love can break you and then build you back into something even stronger. Some dogs get one lifetime of love, but I was given two.
Humans speak in long, winding stories. Dogs need only simple truths. And the deepest truth I ever carried was this: when you love someone, you wait. Not because you're told to, not because you expect a reward, but because love settles into your bones the way warmth settles into sunlight, quiet, certain, unshakable. My name is Amos, and I was the kind of dog who waited with his whole heart. This is the story of how love led me to cold stone steps, and how love, softer, unexpected, and new, carried me back home again. The morning frost made the world glitter. Breath rose from my muzzle in little clouds as I walked beside my person, the man whose footsteps I knew better than my own heartbeat. He wasn't walking like himself that day. His steps were slow, heavy. His hand trembled when it brushed my head. I pressed myself closer to his leg, trying to steady him the way he had steadied me all my life. We reached the church, tall white steeple, big wooden doors. The place he always said felt peaceful. He stopped on the steps and knelt beside me. "Stay here, buddy," he whispered. His voice cracked. I didn't understand why. "I'll be right back." I believed him. I always did. He gave my ears one last soft rub, then stood and walked inside. The doors closed with a low creak that echoed through my chest. So I sat and waited, because that's what loyal dogs do. People came and went. Some smiled at me, some hurried past. A few children scratched behind my ears. Every time the doors opened, hope shot up my spine. My tail swept across the stone as I waited for those familiar footsteps. But each time, strangers emerged instead. The sun lifted high, warming the steeple, but not the cold stone under my paws. Still, I stayed. By evening, shadows stretched long across the churchyard. The air cooled sharply. I curled my big body against the door, still listening for him. I believed he would return before night fell. He didn't. But I didn't move. The next morning, the doors opened again. My head shot up so fast, my neck ached. But my person wasn't there. A man with kind eyes placed a warm piece of bread near me. The smell drifted into my nose, but it tasted like nothing without him. I nudged it away with my snout. Hunger was nothing compared to loyalty. The day passed slowly. My legs felt heavier. My belly tightened with emptiness. But every time the door creaked, I rose and every time it closed, without him, my heart sagged a little more. Still I stayed, because he had said he'd be right back.
Night on stone steps is not like night at home. There is no warm hearth, no soft blanket, no steady breathing of a person who loves you. The cold crept into my bones. My paws trembled as I curled as tightly as my large body allowed. Each sound snapped me awake. Footsteps, distant voices, wind brushing fallen leaves across the ground. Each time I lifted my head, ears straining. Each time, disappointment settled heavier in my chest. I tried not to sleep. What if he returned in the dark and I wasn't ready? But exhaustion dragged me under in short, painful bursts. Dogs don't dream well when they're waiting. I dreamed he called my name, but I couldn't reach him. When I woke, the stone under me was still empty, still cold, still not him. By the third day, my world felt blurry. Sounds overlapped, light hurt my eyes. Hope still flared whenever the doors opened, but it flickered weakly now. A woman approached slowly, gently, and knelt in front of me. "Oh, sweetheart," she whispered, "who are you waiting for?" Her fingers brushed my face. I leaned slightly against her hand before remembering the command, "Stay here." I pressed my nose to the wood of the church door. She understood. Her eyes softened with something like sorrow. She placed a cup of water beside me and let me drink. I managed only a few laps before resting my head again. She left quietly, not trying to take me with her. She knew I wouldn't leave. Not yet. Not until I saw him again.
I didn't want to admit it, even to myself. But by day 4, standing felt like lifting mountains. My legs wobbled, my ribs pressed against my skin. My breath came shallow. Still, I couldn't leave my post. A few people tried coaxing me away, with treats, with whistles, with soft pleas. But a dog's promise isn't something you break. Every time I shifted my weight, the stone scraped my joints like ice. But I stayed where I last saw him, where he told me to stay, where I believed he'd return. Even when the last bit of strength drained from my body, my loyalty held me there. I no longer knew how long I had been waiting. 5 days, 5 nights, 5 cycles of hope rising and falling like a storming sea. On the 5th morning, I didn't lift my head when the doors opened. I heard them, faintly, but my body no longer answered my heart. My ears twitched when I heard voices, not hurried, not dismissive, but worried, gentle. He's still here. Poor boy, he doesn't know that his daddy had a heart attack and died inside the church. We can't leave him like this. I didn't understand what they meant about my daddy. I wanted to look at them, but my head felt too heavy. All I could manage was a faint thump of my tail. A warm blanket draped over my back. The softness startled me. I had forgotten what warmth felt like. "It's okay, sweetheart," a voice whispered. "We've got you." A pair of arms slid beneath me. I didn't fight. I simply sagged into the hold, exhausted beyond fear. They didn't pull me. They carried me. respectfully, carefully, as if they understood I had been holding on to something fragile. And as the stone steps disappeared behind us, the last thread of my vigil finally loosened. Not because I stopped loving him, but because I couldn't stand anymore.
They placed me inside a vehicle lined with blankets. Warm air brushed my freezing fur. Hands stroked my ears, my shoulders. "There you go, Amos," someone murmured. My name. They had read it from my collar, but hearing it spoken after days of silence made my chest tremble. I lifted my eyes to look at them, the rescuers. Strangers, yet not strangers. Their faces were soft, their scents calm. In their voices, there was no pity, only care. As the vehicle hummed down the road, my breathing finally eased. For the first time in nearly a week, I felt safe enough to let my eyes close. I didn't dream of the church steps. I dreamed of warmth. Everything at the rescue center smelled clean. Soap, fresh blankets, soft food, and the faint scent of other animals resting nearby. They lifted me onto a thick bed and placed a bowl of warm broth at my paws. I sniffed it, uncertain. Then hunger overtook hesitation. I lapped slowly, savoring each soothing swallow. Warmth spread through my belly like sunlight after a long winter. A volunteer sat beside me, brushing her fingers down my back. "You're safe now, sweetheart," she whispered, as if she were speaking directly to my tired bones. I lowered my head and let the softness wrap around me. For the first time in days, I slept deeply. No cold, no fear, no waiting. Just rest.
Healing doesn't come all at once. It comes in small, careful breaths. The volunteers were patient, more patient than I knew humans could be. They celebrated every small victory. The first full meal I finished, the cheers that rose when my tail wagged twice instead of once, the gentle pride in their voices when I stood without shaking. "Good boy, Amos. There you go, big guy. We're so proud of you." Those words acted like stitches on my heart, gently pulling the broken pieces back toward each other. I learned the sound of kindness, the way footsteps softened when people wanted to show you they meant no harm. I learned trust again, slowly, carefully, like stepping onto ice and praying it holds. And though the sorrow still lived inside me, something new began to grow beside it. Hope. The day the family came felt different. The air in the room shifted, gently, like the first warm breeze of spring. A man, a woman, and a young girl approached my kennel. But they didn't crowd the bars. They didn't call out excitedly. They didn't coax. They simply sat. The girl settled on the floor, cross-legged, hands open on her lap. Her eyes were soft and quiet. The woman whispered, "Hi, sweetheart." The man murmured, "Take your time, buddy." No pressure, no expectation, just presence. I studied them for a long moment. Their scents were warm, calm, steady, like a hearth after rain. The girl didn't move closer. She waited. Something inside me, something buried under layers of grief, stirred. Slowly, I rose to my paws. My legs were steady now. My heart trembled, but not with fear. I stepped toward the girl, nose lowered, breathing her in.
She lifted her hand, not toward me, but slowly upward, letting me choose the distance. I placed my nose into her palm. Her fingers curled softly around my muzzle. The woman gasped. The man wiped his eyes. And for the first time since losing my person, I felt the tiniest spark of belonging.
When the shelter staff opened my kennel door, I didn't back away this time. The man clipped a leash gently to my collar. "Ready, buddy?" he whispered. I wasn't sure, but the girl's hand stroked my shoulder, and whatever fear remained softened beneath her touch. They walked slowly, giving me time to choose each step. When we reached their car, they lifted me inside with such care that my eyes stung. A soft blanket lined the floor. A plush toy rested nearby, a gift for me. The girl settled beside me, her small fingers moving through the fur behind my ears. "Hi, Amos. We're going home," she whispered. Home! The word wrapped around me like a warm breeze. As the car rolled forward, I rested my head in her lap. She giggled softly when my nose brushed her knee. The woman looked back from the front seat with a tender smile. "Good boy," she murmured. "You're safe now." I closed my eyes, and for the first time since the church doors closed behind my person, I wasn't afraid of where the road was taking me. Their home smelled like kindness, warm laundry, fresh bread, a soft hint of lavender, and underneath it all, the distinct scent of a family that loved deeply. They let me explore slowly. I sniffed the doorway, the living room rug, the soft couch that seemed big enough for me and still had extra room. The girl followed close behind, humming to herself, not rushing me, not touching me unless I chose to come near. When I finally climbed onto the couch, testing it with a careful paw, the woman laughed softly. "Oh, sweetheart, yes, that's for you." I lowered my body onto the cushions. They cradled me like a cloud. The girl pressed her cheek against mine. The man settled beside us, resting a hand on my back. In their warmth, the cold that had lived in my bones for days finally began to melt. I didn't understand everything, but I knew this. I was no longer waiting. I was wanted.
Nights in my new home were quiet, warm, and gentle. But sometimes, in the deepest part of sleep, I still dreamed of the stone steps, the cold, the waiting, the promise I could never fulfill. I would wake with a jolt, breathing fast, heart hammering in my chest. But each time, someone was there. Sometimes the woman placed a hand on my back. Sometimes the man whispered from the doorway, "It's okay, Amos. We're right here." Sometimes the girl climbed down from her bed and wrapped her small arms around my neck. In those moments, the fear faded, and I learned an important truth. Healing doesn't erase the past, but love can soften it until it stops hurting. My memories didn't disappear. They simply became lighter to carry. A dog needs a purpose. Not a command, not a job, but a reason to feel like he matters. One night, the sky cracked open with thunder. The girl cried out in fear. Before the woman or man could reach her room, I was already there. Climbing onto her bed, curling my body protectively around her shaking form, her tiny hands clutched my fur. The storm roared outside. Lightning lit the room, but she buried her face against my chest and breathed easier. The woman stood at the doorway, tears glistening in her eyes. "Good boy, Amos," she whispered. "Thank you." In that moment, I realized something vital. I wasn't just loved. I was needed. And being needed filled the space inside me where loneliness had once lived. Healing happens slowly, quietly, almost secretly. I didn't notice the exact moment it happened, but one morning, as sunlight filtered through the curtains, I stretched on the soft couch and realized my body felt relaxed. My chest felt light. No fear clung to me. No ache twisted in my belly. I simply woke. The girl ran into the room with bright eyes and messy hair. "Morning, Amos," she sang, throwing her arms around my neck. My tail thumped joyfully, not cautious, not hesitant. The woman poked her head into the room with a warm smile. "Someone's feeling better." I was. For the first time since losing my person, I felt like the world was opening again, soft, safe, welcoming. The gentle weight of grief wasn't gone, but it no longer sat heavy in my heart. It had made space for something new, something bright, something like home.
Homes have their own kind of language, not made of words, but of footsteps, rhythms, and gentle noises that tell you everything is okay. At first, every sound startled me. The click of the heater turning on, the soft thump of the refrigerator door, the creak of wooden stairs shifting under nighttime weight, the faint ding of the stove. Each noise sent my ears up, my heart quickening, not because I feared danger, but because I feared change. I feared that doors might open again and someone might not return. But slowly, I began to listen differently. I learned the sound of the girl's excited footsteps, quick, light, happy. I learned the woman's steady footsteps, confident, warm. I learned the man's deep, comforting stride, strong and calm. I learned that a closing door didn't always mean goodbye. Sometimes it simply meant someone was stepping outside to water the plants, or retrieve a package, or call me out for a walk. The house spoke in soft songs of belonging. The hum of the dishwasher, the murmuring of the TV at night, the girl's laughter floating through the air like sunlight. One day, the woman dropped a spoon in the kitchen. It clattered loudly. I didn't flinch. I looked up and then looked back down, continuing to rest in the warm patch of sun on the floor. The girl burst into giggles. "See, Mom, he's getting used to us." Used to them. Used to home. Used to belonging again. For a long time, I made no sound. Not a bark, not a whine, not a growl. Grief had pressed silence into me until my voice felt forgotten. But one bright afternoon, as I rested in the backyard under a tree, a squirrel darted across the fence, bold as a shadow. It froze. I froze. It flicked its tail, taunting me. something inside me surged. Something warm, playful, ancient. I stood tall, fur prickling with excitement. And before I knew it, a deep, thunderous bark tore from my chest. It startled even me. The squirrel leapt up the fence in terrified urgency, scrambling away with righteous indignation. The girl shrieked with laughter. The woman clapped in delight. The man grinned from ear to ear. "There he is," the man said. "There's our big, tough boy." Their joy washed over me. My voice hadn't been lost. It had only been waiting for the right moment and the right home to return. I barked again, just to see their smiles, and because it felt good, it felt alive.
Autumn came. The air grew crisp again, but this time the cold didn't sting. It soothed. Leaves tumbled across the yard in golden swirls. The scent of earth and wind wrapped around me like a familiar blanket. I followed the breeze with my eyes and felt a memory shiver through me. The church steps, frost on stone, waiting until my heart nearly fractured. I lowered myself into the grass, staring at the sky. The clouds drifted lazily, nothing like the heavy, lonely ceiling of the days I waited. The girl noticed my stillness and came to sit beside me. Her tiny hand rested on my back, right where old sadness still lived. "You're okay, Amos," she whispered. "You don't have to be sad anymore. We're right here." Her words sank deep into my chest, settling in the place where fear used to sleep. The wind shifted, warm this time, carrying the smell of my family. I let out a long breath, not a sorrowful sigh, but of release. That night, I didn't dream of the church. I dreamed of home. It happened during a storm. Thunder shook the sky like an angry drum. Lightning flashed bright enough to paint the walls in white streaks. The girl cried out, fear tightening her voice. As soon as she saw me, she reached out desperately. I climbed onto the bed, curling my body around hers, creating a shield of warmth and safety. Her small hands clutched my fur tightly. The woman arrived at the doorway, but when she saw me protecting her child, she didn't move me. She only whispered, "Good boy, Amos. Thank you." The storm boomed and cracked outside, but the girl's breathing softened against me. Her heartbeat slowed. Eventually, she fell asleep, wrapped in my fur, trusting me completely. And in that moment, I understood something powerful. Love had found me again, not only to heal me, but to give me a purpose. I wasn't just part of this family. I was their protector, their comfort, their safe place, just as they had become mine. The day the family decided I was strong enough for a long walk, the air smelled like adventure. We drove to a quiet trail surrounded by tall trees and leaves whispering secrets in the wind. The man clipped on my leash loosely, not pulling, not directing, simply walking beside me like a trusted friend. "Go at your pace, buddy," he murmured. So I did. Each step felt new and old at the same time, like rediscovering a part of myself I thought had been lost on those stone steps. The ground beneath my paws was soft earth instead of cold concrete. Birds called overhead in playful melodies. Sunlight filtered through branches like golden threads. The girl skipped ahead, laughing. The woman walked nearby, keeping an eye on both of us. Halfway down the trail, I stopped. Not because I was tired, not because I was afraid, but because I felt full. Full of breath, full of life, full of the quiet joy that had been missing inside me for so long. The girl next down beside me, pressing her forehead to mine. "Do you like it, Amos?" she asked. I didn't have human words, but if I did, I would have said, "This feels like breathing again. This feels like being whole." Instead, I leaned gently into her shoulder. She giggled and wrapped her arms around my neck. For the first time in a long time, I understood I was walking towards something, not away from something. Freedom wasn't just movement, it was belonging, and I had found it.
There are quiet moments in life when a dog realizes something simple and miraculous. This is my family. These are my people. This is my forever. For me, that moment came late one night. The house was asleep. Soft lamps glowed faintly in the living room. I lifted my head from the couch and walked slowly through the home that had healed me. The girl's shoes lay by the door. The woman's book rested by her favorite chair. The man's jacket hung near the hallway. Their scents were everywhere, warm, familiar, comforting. I padded down the hall and peeked into the girl's room. She slept peacefully, hair messy, cheek pressed to her pillow, one small hand dangling over the edge of the bed. I nudged her fingers with my nose. She stirred, smiled in her sleep, and whispered my name, Amos. Something inside my chest swelled with a warmth so deep it ached. This wasn't temporary. This wasn't a stop between places. This wasn't a maybe. This was home. This was family. And I was no longer a dog waiting for someone to return. I was a dog who had been chosen again for love, for belonging, for life. Time moved forward with gentle steps. The memories of the stone steps remained, but no longer as a living sorrow. They became something quieter, like a distant echo, or a soft faded photograph tucked away in my heart. Some days, when the world grew still, I would remember him, the man whose hand had been my first home, my first love, my first purpose. I didn't love him any less, but I no longer lived in the shadow of those cold days. I had a new purpose now, a child to protect, a family to comfort, a home to watch over, a love that didn't replace the past, but grew alongside it, bigger, warmer, fuller. The cold stone steps didn't define me anymore. They were part of where I had been, not where I was going. Love had found me once, and it had found me again, because some hearts, especially the loyal ones, are meant to be carried forward, not left behind.
Winter arrived slowly, covering the yard with soft white snow. At first, the cold air made old memories tighten in my chest. Memories of frost on stone, of breath puffing into the darkness, of waiting for someone who would never come. But this winter was different. This winter, the girl bundled herself in a bright red coat and waddled outside like a tiny penguin. She threw snowballs terribly. Half of them crumbled in her mittens. The woman laughed from the porch, her breath fogging the air. The man shoveled the walkway while humming some quiet tune. I watched them from the doorway, feeling warmth press against the old places inside me where cold used to live. "Come on, Amos," the girl called. "It's okay." And just like that, something brave inside me pushed my paws forward into the snow. The cold didn't feel like loneliness anymore.
It felt like life. I chased the girl around the yard, my big paws sending sprays of snow behind me. She shrieked with laughter, fell backward into a snowbank, and I nosed her gently until she giggled again. The man snapped a picture and said softly, "Look at him. He's truly home now." And he was right. Winter no longer hurt. It healed. Dogs don't understand guilt the way humans do, but we do understand loyalty, and sometimes that loyalty clings even when it hurts. For a long time, a quiet part of me felt that feeling happiness again meant letting go of the person I once loved. But one night, something changed. I lay on the couch as the girl read a book aloud, or rather strumbled adorably through the words. The woman braided her hair gently between sentences. The man sat rubbing my ears in slow circles, exactly the way I liked. Their presence wrapped around me like a blanket, and suddenly I understood. Loving my new family didn't erase the love I had before. He had loved me with all he had. I had loved him with all I was. Nothing could change that. But love isn't a stone placed once and never touched again. Love is a river. It moves. It flows. It carries us forward. And that night, as my tail thumped softly against the couch cushions, I allowed myself to feel joy without fear of betraying the past. The past had shaped me, but joy was allowed to shape me too. The moment came quietly. No fanfare, no revelation, just a peaceful morning light spilling into the living room. I stretched on the couch, my joints warm and comfortable. The girl slept with one arm draped over my belly, her hair a messy halo. The woman sipped coffee nearby, wrapped in a soft robe. The man hummed as he packed lunches in the kitchen. It was an ordinary moment, simple, gentle, familiar. And yet, something inside me shifted. I realized I wasn't listening for footsteps outside. I wasn't checking the door. I wasn't waiting for someone who wasn't coming back. My heart was here. My home was here. My life, the one I thought had ended on the stone steps, had begun again. And this time, I didn't have to earn it. I didn't have to wait for it. I didn't have to fear losing it. It was simply mine.
As days turned into seasons, my fur grew shinier, my stride stronger, my heart fuller. I greeted each sunrise not with dread, but with a calm certainty that my family would be right there beside me. I became a companion, a protector, a source of comfort, and sometimes the cause of the girl's unstoppable giggles when I trotted around wearing one of her hats. The man called me Big Guy. The woman called me Sweetheart. The girl called me my Amos. And every time she whispered it against my fur, my heart swelled with the kind of love that softens everything it touches. My second chance wasn't just survival, it was purpose. It was belonging. It was joy I hadn't known was possible again. Some hearts are shattered. Some hearts are hardened. Mine was both, and then it was healed. I still remember the stone steps, the cold, the waiting, the ache that lived in me like winter. But those memories no longer weigh me down. They simply remind me how far I've come. The man who loved me first gave me the gift of loyalty. The family who found me gave me the gift of life. Now when I rest my head in the girl's lap and feel her small hand stroke my ears, I know the truth. I wasn't abandoned. I wasn't forgotten. I wasn't left behind. I was carried through grief, through fear, through loneliness, all the way to a home that could love me back to wholeness. My name is Amos, and my story is proof that even the deepest heartbreak can lead to the brightest beginning. Because love, once rooted, always finds a way to bloom again.
Sometimes, in the quietest hours of night, I still think about the man who first held my world in his hands. I remember the warmth of his voice. I remember the comfort of his presence. I remember the way he said, "I'll be back," believing it with all his heart. Losing him carved a hollow inside me, one so deep I thought it would echo forever. But then, new hands lifted me. New voices soothed me. New love found me when I didn't even know how to look for it. I learned that hearts aren't glass. They don't shatter once and stay broken. They mend. They grow. They make space for new joy without letting go of the old. Now, when I rest my head in the lap of the child who calls me her big, gentle boy, when the sun rises on another day of warmth, safety, and belonging, I know with certainty I wasn't abandoned. I was carried. Carried through grief. Carried toward healing. Carried straight into a love that was waiting for me all along. My very name, Amos, meant carried by God. I was carried not only by sorrow, but ultimately by love. And I've learned that some endings are really just the beginnings of the most beautiful kind of home.